with a heap of yarn and imagination, and your imagination takes you to, you know,
New
wherever
heights.
you want to go. You know, it's like your magic carpet ride.
The Art of Zenobia Bailey, next on Black Nouveau. Hello, and welcome to Black Nouveau. I'm Faithe. Milton Dockery is away this week. Along with the Art of Zenobia Bailey, we'll profile artist Reginald Baylor and meet master illusionist, the Spellbinder. But first, we continue our conversation with one of Milwaukee's living legends, Vel Phillips. Last week, she talked about being the first woman and an African American on the Common Council. Liddy Collins continues that interview.
Vel Phillips, a woman of first, has the Milwaukee County Children's Court named for her. Her path to success started in her youth. A family friend, attorney James Dorsey, and his wife sparked the idea of Phillips wanting to become a lawyer.
My sister and I would listen to them. We have a large kitchen, and we'd be on the back stairs listening. And he always had this wonderful booming voice, and so logical in his, whenever they'd be discussing current issues. Once when my mother and I were baking cookies, she said, "Now your sister's going into nutrition. What do you want to do?" I was about maybe 8 years old, 10 years old. And I said, "I'd like to be a lawyer like Mr. Dorsey." And it stunned me because she didn't just say, because she was always so encouraging. She said, "Oh, are you sure?" And that stunned me. So I said, "I can't be a lawyer." She said, "Well, there aren't many women lawyers in the country." This was, you know, God, I wasn't even 10 years old. And I said, "Well, I can't be one." She said, "Well," I guess I looked so hurt. She said, "Well, honey, you can be whatever you want to be. There aren't many, but if that's what you want to do, we'll just work on that, you know." But I kind of felt that she was just kind of, didn't want to discourage me, but that it was kind of difficult. So that's made me want to do it.
Why did you go into politics?
Because it was accidental, really. I planned none of my career. Nothing was planned. I was with the League of Women Voters. I joined the League of Women Voters because I was a lawyer and they were working on reapportionment. When I went door to door for reapportionment, I just saw so much, you know, houses that had only a space heater and so much of what was not pleasant.
Phillips' caring brought her to ask her husband, Vel Phillips, also an attorney, to run for the Common Council. He declined and suggested she run, and she did. She was the first black and woman on the Common Council. She continued her first, being appointed judge in Milwaukee, winning a state election, and the first black elected to the National Committee of either major U.S. political party. She has good memories of all her first.
The bench was with children. It was, you felt like you were really enjoying something. The city council was my first experience, and I was there the longest, and it was exciting. Secretary of State was the least fun, you know. There were many times when I'd be acting governor because the governor was Dreyfus at the time, and the lieutenant governor was always fishing. So when the governor was making speeches all over, and the lieutenant governor was fishing, so I would be the acting governor, and that was kind of fun.
Tell us about some of your experiences of being arrested during the long, hot summer of 1967.
I'll never forget it because I was in a cell for a few hours,
When you were arrested, was it a housing march or a...
Oh yes, we were marching for housing. The same thing that, you know, and we just started, but they would, we would cross the bridge and they would throw rotten eggs and urine and feces and all that, you know. You'd have to come home, and it was not easy. But it was exciting. It was exciting.
What are some of the people you marched with?
My favorite person was Dick Gregory. He was so much fun. But a lot of famous people. I've known 3 presidents, JFK, and I helped him a lot, and LBJ, and Jimmy Carter. Those are, and of course Martin Luther King, I knew. I've been able, because of the things that I've done, I've been able to meet a lot of interesting people.
Despite her achievements, Vel Phillips said, unfortunately, racism is alive and well in America.
And I think that's illustrated, Liddy, if I may say so, by the way they are treating this president. I mean, it took 8 years for the past administration to leave. It's always the same. When you get black becomes a mayor of a city, usually they're in deep doo-doo. No, money is short. Everything is, crime is high, and all that. Then you get a black mayor. And when Obama took over, we had, you know, the worst economy that we've known since the Big Depression. No health care, 2 wars, prison population booming. I mean, he came in at a rough time. And he hadn't been in 4 or 5 months before they started saying he hasn't done this. And it took 8 years for the past administration to put us in this situation. Suddenly, they expected Obama to take care of it in his first year.
And Milwaukee.
Milwaukee is still kind of rough around the edges. I mean, we haven't come into our own yet, but we're working on it. And I was born in Milwaukee, and I love Milwaukee, but it has not only some rough spots, it has some big pimples that need to be ironed out.
Zenobia Bailey's art has been described as being bold, beautiful, and colorful. Bobby Drake has that story.
In the American story, artists from far and wide fuse personal identity with cultural heritage. Zenobia Bailey dives into the African-American aesthetic of crochet. Now, with the aesthetic that you learned in school and what you had grown up with, is this a combination of those works, or is this your idea of the African-American aesthetic?
My instructors told me there was no such thing as an African-American aesthetic, and I told them there was, because that's how I was in art school, because I was, that's the aesthetic that I was raised on, because I deal with the aesthetic of funk. It's really based on an emotional rhythm, pattern kind of development, and the color combinations. There's no set technique to do it except for the stitching, but as far as the surface design, you know when it works and you know when it doesn't work.
When did you start displaying your works, or this collection?
Well, this collection started at the turn of the century. Started doing a residency I was in the Studio Museum of Harlem. Nothing was done as far as that residency was concerned, and I titled that Paradise Under Reconstruction in the Aesthetic of Funk. That was the first stage. From there, I was just working for 7 years. It was a 7-year project. I was just working on different components, kind of trying to build the whole concept together. I started with the hats. The hats, I used myself as the muse.
Right.
And I started designing hats that I could wear to the different functions and different things that I go to develop that lifestyle. Hats take about 2 weeks to do. The other pieces are the mandalas. They're points of concentration for meditation. These are based off of a lot of inspirational and spiritual artifacts from different cultures and combining the aesthetic of funk to it.
Does each one of these pieces, like some of these are just, they look so extremely vast and time consuming. How long does it normally take you to do a piece?
What I do with each piece is I just do individual circles. And I just do like a bunch of different circles, different sizes, and then I'll just all of a sudden stop and take the largest piece and put it on the wall. And then I'll take another piece and I'll start composing the different pieces. And then after I see that it's where I want it to be, then I start putting the blanket stitch to stitch them all together. But it's a phase of a lot of crocheting, and the largest pieces take about a month to do, maybe a couple of weeks to a month to do. And the smaller pieces I don't even know because I'm just, you know, I never really time them or anything. But the tent took about 6 months to do. This tent here took about six months to do.
And you put the garments for each one of these?
Yeah, I made the garments. I made everything for them. The faces are made out of terracotta clay. I made a mold for them. And then I painted it over with acrylic paint. And then I made their dresses.
In addition to her artwork, Zenobia has also developed a workshop.
It's in my head right now. Goodness.
What is the workshop itself about?
The workshop itself is about creativity and community development, and that's what this is. This is a community, and this is a community that's like gypsies on the road, you know, and like what we're doing, we set up camp here, and we have the workshops in the artery, and from that workshops, we're trying to stimulate, inspire creativity within the communities wherever we go. And really, it's something that everybody can do right now, because like in every household, somebody knows how to crochet, somebody knows how to knit, somebody knows how to sew, you know. So it's just being inspired to do it, you know, but all this, nothing is new. None of it is new. It's all about the needle, the imagination, and just taking the time to do it with a heap of yarn and imagination, and your imagination takes you to, you know,
New
wherever
heights.
you want to go. You know, it's like your magic carpet ride.
Chicago native Waffle Zone, also known as the Spellbinder, is among only a handful of African American illusionists in the entire country. For over 35 years, he has captivated audiences all over the world.
I got bit by the bug when I was 7 years old. I saw a program, a kids program on television, and it had a little segment on it called The Magic Hands. And it would do little magician's tricks and teach you how to do it. And I knew I was a bit thin because I loved seeing the magic happen. But learning how to do it was even more fascinating for me. And that's when I knew I could relate to it, because, you know, most kids, most people, when, you know, they want to know the secret, and once they find out the secret, they usually get disillusioned. But to see the artist and what he had to go through to create the effect, I was so fascinated. I said, I got to learn this. And that's when that's pretty much when it took off. There is the key, because people just don't. I mean, a card trick is a card trick. You know, people, fathers, uncles, some moms, they can do a card trick. But people want theater. People, when they come to see a show, they're not coming to be tricked, actually. I mean, they want to see it. But what I do successful is that I'm taking them someplace with it. The magic is just a tool, it's a paintbrush. But the art is taking you on a journey, the rhythms of the music, the dance, the personality. Every piece that I do, I try and, so to speak, tell an abstract story. The music sometimes leads you, sometimes the dance leads you, sometimes the acting leads you in a direction. And to me, it's the ultimate canvas to paint on. Theater, dance, music, and illusion.
there is a distinction between a magician and an illusionist.
What distinguishes an illusionist from a magician is the scope of the genre of the magic that they're performing in. For instance, a magician works under the definition of prestidigitation, which usually defines sleight of hand, misdirection, things of that sort. But an illusionist actually has to do something right before your very eyes that isn't really happening because, well, it's an illusion, but it is happening because you're actually watching it happening, but it's not really happening. And it's usually on a larger scale, like tigers and women floating in the air and things like that. But a magician works on a smaller scale, making, you know, balls appear, cards change and disappear and things like that. It's just the scope of the playing field. We'll be doing, I call them illusionettes. I will be doing some levitation, some of the pieces that are, I call it staple in my act that people know me for. One of the favorites that the people love to see is when the tables that I use, I make them float in the air. I'm going to bring a person out of the audience and do some animation of a drawing, make the drawing come to life, so to speak. I'm an artist by trade. My background is art. I was drawing since I was 3 years old. I went to Columbia College to learn animation. I graduated from Columbia with a fine arts degree. And to me, art is an illusion. One of my favorite artists is Salvador Dali, basically because he painted surrealism, meaning he was painting something real, but in a surreal scape. And it was, you know, you're looking at this scene and it gets the imagination, you know.
Oh, see, look, it's not a card.
It's the deck.
Thank you, it's a whole box of cards.
Wow.
Right.
Cards is in there.
See, this card is in that box.
That's right.
Magicians usually have a camaraderie because we have a canvas that we can relate on. So, you know, it goes on and on. And I put together a whole program based off of these magicians in history because people have always said, we've never seen a black magician before. But we've always had black magicians in our community from then until now. Most of the times we just didn't call them magicians, we called them hustlers. Wilmot Barclay, who was the first great escape artist. Houdini actually saw Wilmot Barclay escape from handcuffs, and that's how he got his inspiration. I talk about Henry Box Brown, who you can read about in the history books, but a lot of people don't know that he was actually a magician. And as a little boy, Henry Brown, he learned sleight of hand from Tricky Sam. And then the legend goes, well, not the legend, but the history goes that Henry Brown actually escaped from slavery using his precepts of magic and illusion by getting himself nailed inside of a crate and mailing himself to the free state of Philadelphia.
Even though black magicians still face their share of struggles today, the Spellbinder has endured with dignity.
There has been times when I've noticed unfairness when it comes to, so let's say, getting booked or getting jobs, or, you know, there are times when you get overlooked or there's personality conflicts and things like that. But, you know, you learn how to persevere. You learn how to turn a no into a yes. My whole career is triumphs, has been triumphs to me. All things are possible to him that believe.
Reginald Baylor's year as artist in residence at the Pfister Hotel ends this April. We thought this would be a good time to revisit his portfolio.
The pop era, very graphic, sort of cartoony. Cartoon in the sense that I outline almost subjects in a black line. That creates sort of an animated quality. And the fact that I don't blend colors and they're unique and deciphered within themselves are the graphic aspects of it. And especially today, as art is moving into even more graphic realm because the new tool is the computer, it seems that my work is sort of commentary to that idea.
Meet native Milwaukeean Reginald Baylor, whose description of himself is
43-year-old man, young man from Milwaukee, father, artist.
Art for Baylor, a UW Oshkosh graduate, started back in the 4th grade with his attention to detail.
My work seemed to be somewhat separate than the rest of my classmates as far as details and the amount of time and energy that I would put towards it, even with your regular school projects. Even in geometry class, when you're doing rectangles, squares, and circles, well, mine, I would make sure that they were perfect. That attention to detail visually was just something I just couldn't get out of my head.
Even though his art was nurtured, life took over, and he strayed away from his art. But he said going off course made him stay on course.
Family had a lot to do with it, responsibility to my wife and children. I had to set that to the side, even though it was a dream of mine, living the dream, as they say. Sometimes reality takes precedence over the dream. But then being away from it then also made me realize that how much need I have for just being creative any way possible. And so it came back itself. Despite what I was doing, it showed its head.
What was it like going from, I want to say, the everyday kind of work kind of job going into your dream job?
Well, what worked out well for me was being an independent truck driver. My own businessman, so therefore I could determine when I could go and when I couldn't. So it was a balance of financial responsibilities and then my creative responsibilities. So that helped me. I don't think there would have been any other career that would have worked as well as it has for me to get me to this point.
And so how did you get back into the dream?
Just doing it.
Putting in the time and effort brought about his self-portrait entitled Leap of Faith.
At a stage in my life where I needed to take a leap from my career as a truck driver to being a full-time artist and, with a family. It was a very, very scary thing. It wasn't just my wishes that I was imposing this on, but it was family and children and economics, so on and so forth. So approaching that idea of leaping, coming from somewhere and obviously hopefully going somewhere and making that journey.
This journey, this leap of faith, led Baylor to Milwaukee's Pfister Hotel, where he is the first artist in residence.
Pfister has a immense art collection, Victorian art collection. There's over 70 something works of art here. What I decided to do here for the next year is to just sort of intervene, I would say, to be a conduit to what is contemporary and some of the values I find in aesthetic beauty as an artist, and sort of dovetail what the Pfister has. The Pfister has always had a history of being involved in the arts here in Milwaukee for many, many years. I mean, the collection is a perfect example itself.
And he was inspired by one of the pieces in the Pfister collection.
When I was looking for inspiration, I decided to why not work with the first piece of art that was next to me. And right down the hallway, that painting was there. And the composition was interesting. It's called The Captive. And so I decided to pretty much work from that concept. All my work, pretty much, when it's figurative, it's small vignettes of ideas that might not all coexist when I take the photograph. So these are a collage of things that are here at the Pfister. The figures that are in this piece are from a competitive ballroom composition that they have here every year. I asked those two dancers to pose in the same position in which that painting. I was inspired by the captive, and then I built from there. I'm fascinated with imagery and how many times the average person is fed an image a day. It's 15 times more images we see, basically because we carry around devices that give us images, whether it's the internet or the television. We're a very visual culture, and that's only going to grow. It's not going to get less. So when I first started thinking about that, little sound bites of information is what I'm interested in. I love when people come to my painting and get it, and then can be able to walk away and then ask them if they can retain what they saw in 5 seconds. And that's not a ploy, and I'm not trying to deceive anyone, but I think sort of this idea of instant gratification is an artistic expression itself. So I'm just trying to communicate to people, even though they might not be able to translate what I'm saying.
Pain, fear, hope, salvation, and waking up in the morning is Reginald Baylor's motivation.
I just believe it to be my purpose. This is what I'm to do, and I've never thought otherwise. I've always had that feeling that art was going to always be an essential part of my life, and the struggle in making myself do it every day when you really have no concrete vision of what that future might bring has actually made my work better.
And that wraps up this edition of Black Nouveau. Milton will be with us next time. Remember, in the coming week, do something to expand your world. Good night.